Highclere Castle, what can you say? It's magnificent.
It's a wonderful house. It's a wonderful house. And I have been wanting to use it. I mean, I've been trying to get it used in not only in Gosford, actually, but also before that, when I did Little Lord Fauntleroy with George Baker for the BBC. I can't remember now, that didn't work for some other reason. But then with Gosford, Bob Altman wanted to be nearer London. And we went to Ruton, which of course is marvellous. I mean, it completely works in the film. But I have had this sort of hunger to use Highclere. I particularly like it because it's not just one more of those sort of graceful Jane Austen columns and portico houses. It's a different statement. And it's not a mellow manor house, in the fold of the hills. It's a statement about Victorian confidence. It was built, at least I say built, it was encased. It is actually a much older house. But Barry put on this Gothic clothing in about 1838, right at the beginning of Queen Victoria's reign. And, it says so much about their confidence and what they felt was England's role in the world and what their role in England was, And I love all that. So I am delighted. And I'm particularly pleased that ITV and Gareth Neame at Carnival bit on the bullet and allowed us to use all the principal interiors, the hall, the dining room, because it always annoys me in a movie or a television when they go through the front door and you're obviously in a completely different house and, they never quite get it right. And this, it is organic because it's all the real house. And I love that. I think it's a real bonus.
Tell me about the rooms particularly you liked in Highclere.
My two favourite rooms there are the library, which I think is one of the great rooms in England. It is an absolutely extraordinary room. Very beautiful, the books, the paneling, the gilding, and the space that it's divided into the larger space and the smaller space. So it has a kind of rhythm to itself. And the long windows looking out across the park. Of course, the whole business of inside-outside was something the Victorians understood, but the Georgians did not. If you live in a house much before the early years of the 19th century, you usually have to go out into some garden hall or something to get out. But they didn't, that thing of throwing the doors open and letting the park inside, which I think is lovely. And the other interior is the Great Hall, which is originally the Great Hall of, in fact, a monastery that was taken over in the Reformation. And that was where the monks ate. And then it was turned into a Georgian hall, and then, a Carolean one, and then a Georgian one. And finally, this is its last encasement by Barry. And the endless sort of coats of arms and everything, all making this tremendous statement about the Herbert family and the Earls of Carnarvon and so on. I love all that, really.
And the characters that you've depicted here, I mean, do they come from real people? With regard to the research that you've done, because you love your research, Julian. You love your history.
I love my history. You always tend, I think, to build on emotional predicaments that you have witnessed. I mean, it doesn't mean, it's rather like a main character. It may be based on someone, but that may be a person of a different sex or different age. It's just what you've taken is their problem with their mother, whatever it is, and you use that. So I think one does rather look around for things. And yes, in a way, I mean, the story, which doesn't really begin until 2, when Matthew Crawley comes to Downton, is sort of based on a experience of some people I know, but then Matthew's story isn't their story, because it's only ever a kind of lifting off point.
Can I ask you why particularly this part of history? Why did you want to set a drama at the turn of the 20th century?
I think both Gareth and I were very keen that although these people were leading a life that in some ways is like something on the moon, we wanted to make it a recognisable life. And by 1912, I mean, my grandmother was pregnant with my father at the date when we opened this series. He was born in the following July. So, and this is my father, and I don't mean it's not my great-great-great-grandfather. This is now, and he only died in 1999. So it's not that long ago, and it gives us cars and trains, and they have a telephone during the series. Actually, they get a telephone and electricity and everything. And I feel that when people are watching, obviously I don't mean they identify with the way of life, because they don't live like that, but lots of them didn't live like that then. But they understand the life. They think, oh, I think it looks like these are kind of modern people in a sort of modern world, as opposed to, when you do something about the Civil War, it's miles away.
Yeah. When people watching, what do you hope them to sort of take away with them? Why do you want, why should they tune in for this? What does it have for them?
I hope they do. We examine different human predicaments. We examine relationships with your parents, and disappointment, and sibling rivalry, and failed love, and all these things go through the series, whether or not they're servants or family. I think that the way of managing this life emotionally, when people knew the rules, when they could be friendly, certainly. I mean, that sort of television cliche, when everyone's horrible to their servants, is unrealistic, because plenty of jobs, they didn't have to stay. And a lot of people, the average time a footman stayed in a household in London was 18 months. The old thing that everyone stayed forever is all nonsense. And so, of course, most people were reasonable, because otherwise everyone would go. But what I think is interesting is the way they judged the degrees, that the valet could be friendly. They could talk about anything. The lady's maid with the miss. But the friendship was governed by the employer, that it was as intimate as they chose and as distant as they chose. And the clever servant understood all that, and they adjusted and trimmed and delivered what was wanted of them. I mean, I think the only real exception to that is the butler, possibly the housekeeper actually, but the butler and the housekeeper, because they were figures of authority. I mean, in the episode 1, Robert is pushed into doing something he doesn't want to do by Carson, because Carson is the captain of his ship, and he doesn't feel that he can actually simply until at the end he finds he can't do it. But nevertheless, his brain is telling him that he's got to do it, because Carson is entitled to be in charge of the below stairs. And that balance of power interests me, that of course one is salaried and the other one is paying it, but nevertheless there is a kind of understanding as to who controls what. All of that I find very interesting, and I hope the audience will too.
And I have to say, the greatest lines and funny lines, Maggie Smith, you've done it again.
Well, she's done it again. You write a line you think is funny, but you've got to have it played by someone who knows how to do it. And, I think she is wonderful to write for. She's very rewarding to write for, because she doesn't miss a trick. And, that's great.